Well, hello and welcome to the On It Not In It interview series podcast. I'm your host, Todd Eppert, and today I'm joined by Dr. Aaron Boster, who is the founder of the Boster Center for Multiple Sclerosis. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
With pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Aaron Boster. I'm a multiple sclerosis neurologist in sunny Columbus, Ohio, my hometown. I am the most unassuming and unplanned entrepreneur on the planet. I went to school to be an MS neurologist, and when I finished on my training around age 33, I went and got my first big boy job at a university because I was told that you couldn't practice my craft of taking care of people impacted by MS outside of an academic environment. And I worked in academics for too long. I became increasingly frustrated with bureaucracy and with red tape and limitations in my ability to care for families. I had an opportunity that arose. There was a big healthcare system, actually a competing system within the same town, and they were looking for a guy to run their immunology for their healthcare system. So I was very excited and I took this job outside of academics. I became a systems chief for a big hospital, 13 hospitals, and kind of controlled the way multiple sclerosis was delivered. In transparency, I was terrified that I would fail because I wasn't going to be in an academic environment. And it turns out that that was completely hogwash and that it was completely reasonable to see patients impacted by MS and to do clinical research, which is a big part of my job, in a non-academic environment. And the first couple of years were a dream. I built a center of excellence. It became a giant destination center where we flew people in from all over the place. It was very, very exciting. And as time went by, I was less and less aligned with the leadership, and we started to be at odds, and it became increasingly difficult to try to do the things I wanted to do. And so we parted ways in 2019. And I went out on my own in 2020. I opened my doors March 18th of 2020, 2 days before the governor of Ohio chose to close the state. And that was my entrance into self-employment in my own center. It's been one hell of a ride. I'm very proud of what my team has done. I run a standalone multiple sclerosis center. There's about 18 team members that work with me. And we care for about 1,500 families right now from all over the globe, actually. People we're honored they fly in from all over the place. We run multiple clinical trials, developing research to try to bring new drugs to market. I have a very large infusion operation because many of our drugs are infused. And it turns out that not only do you not need to be in academics to do my craft, but you don't need to be in a system. You can do it yourself. So I'm delighted to be here with you today to talk a bit about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that background. I need to apologize to you. I think I said Bolster twice. So it's Boster, Dr. Aaron Boster.
I'll tell you, when I was in training, I worked in a lab, and the investigator used to call me boy. She would say, boy, go get girl. We're going to have a meeting. So after being called boy for a few years, you can call me whatever you like, sir.
So I love the story, the background that into getting us to where you got, because the funniest part about it is you were scared. B, you thought, I can't go from academia into a facility, and I certainly can't go into business. What's this going to look like?
Yep.
And that's a really common fear of most people that are in the working world that are like, I can never be an entrepreneur. Right. And then you use some of the magic words. I got misaligned with my leadership. Right.
Yep.
In some way, something happened between you and the leaders of that hospital system. And you said, you know what? I'm going to take my ball and go play by myself.
Yep.
Right. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's how a lot of entrepreneurs are born. And the fact that you started right before the governor shut down Ohio, it's a common story also for a lot of business owners these days. So yeah, thanks for sharing that background. So other than the misalignment with the leadership, was there ever this, did you grow up with kind of this, I want to be an entrepreneur, or was it always, I want to be a doc? What was the whole
when I was, so my desire to do multiple sclerosis was from childhood. My uncle had MS, and I watched him deteriorate in a time before therapies, and I watched docs that I don't have a lot of respect for do a bad job of taking care of them, and I told my family that I was going to learn to do it better. But if you put a pin in that for a second, my father is a business owner and a very successful businessman, and Most of my loving relationship with him surrounds finances and business and things like that. And when I was 11, he sat me down and he said, "Son, would you like to have a car when you're 16?" I said, "Yeah, Dad, I would." He goes, "Well, I will never, ever buy you a car ever, but I will teach you how to make money to earn a car." And when I was 11, we set up a lawn care business and we made flyers and we did a map of where the rich people lived. And I went out door to door and I got about 20 lawns. And so by the time I finished high school, I had kids working for me and I was paying them a salary and I had a little tiny lawn care empire. That's how I bought my first car and my first house. So I think the entrepreneurial spirit really was kind of handed down to me directly from my father. He's still my most important advisor as I try to navigate through, my own center.
I love that story. So deep down inside, you were an entrepreneur. You just decided to go be a doctor for a minute or two.
Yeah,
Became
I guess that's right.
That's great. So yeah, so that's fantastic. I love that story. Thanks for sharing it. So, okay. So now, you get through all of that and then you start your business and you've already talked about something that you learned that you, A, don't have to be attached to a system, and B, you can see patients face to face. You don't have to be an academic to do the work that you're doing. But there were probably some, so that was a kind of maybe a pleasant surprise. This actually does work. 1,500 families, they're flying in to come see you. So this does work. But what are some things that you thought were going to be the case, some misconceptions you had about it when you started your business, and now what you're really dealing with as you're running a business?
HR. Yeah, humans, people. When I mapped out the center, I did a pretty decent job of thinking through the patient's experience, where the lobby was and where they'd sit, and the flow, the Lean Sigma 6 flow through it, the infusion center. But I forgot about the people that would run the center, and I mapped it out with 3 people, and we need 18 to do this job. So there was a huge learning curve, realizing that that it took a lot more manpower than I thought. Now, trying to hire and employ and maintain team members during a pandemic was its own monster. And I'm going to age myself, but sometimes hiring 20 somethings is a bit frustrating. I might be a little bit old school in my work ethic and my belief in quality of work. And, I have this weird belief that you should come in the morning and you should stay all day long and work real hard, and then you should go home and come back the next day. And interestingly, that's not top of mind for all humans. So the biggest learning I've had, or frustration I've had, is trying to find good people, trying to be slow to hire them and quick to fire them, God forbid, if we need to, and really building a culture. I didn't realize how important having a proper culture within a small business was. And so that's probably the biggest barrier and frustration to me, and also probably the biggest surprise.
Yeah. So you just struck a couple of nerves with me, which are fantastic. So I'm a manufacturing executive by background. So lean manufacturing was I used it all along. And you're talking about lean healthcare and designing your facility. And I love that healthcare took advantage of something that the manufacturing world had been doing for so long. I wish our government would figure it out, but we'll talk about that another time.
But Lean Sigma 6 applies to medicine way more than you'd think at first blush.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, it's data, right? It's data.
I mean, we do time studies to help weeks to walk. We do improv Gimba walks at times. I mean, it works very, very well, because, my business is actually 3 different entities. We all work together under an umbrella, and empowering each of those entities to be able to process and make their own decisions and interact is critical. And you're right. That's all things we learned from you guys in manufacturing.
So I was in Cincinnati in a consulting group that was working with a local hospital way back in the mid-teens, and they were talking about doing that, and we're like, this applies to you. They're like, some of the healthcare professionals were like, that's manufacturing, it doesn't apply to us. And to hear you say that, how fast you realized, and that's not just you, that's the healthcare industry has realized that these things really do work. It's fantastic.
It does work. I'll give you just a quick example. When I was running this big healthcare system, we had our center of excellence, and I had 2 separate teams, and they're in these sequential hallways. They couldn't see each other, and they would fight. And there was a lot of infighting, and they're not working as hard as we are, so on and so forth. We made a big change where we simply moved them across from one another so they could make eye contact. No more problems ever.
Right.
And it was a very simple thing, but boy, it took a big problem and made it go away.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I love that idea. Thank you. Yeah, there was another nerve you struck, but I can't remember what it was now. That's the big thing that really struck me.
HR. And I think we were talking about how awesome it is to work with human beings.
Oh yeah, yes, you did say that. So I was just talking to a client today that literally said, you can teach somebody how to make a wall, and once they learn it, they can do it every single time. But every single human that walks through the door is different. You'll never learn how to manage every single human. It's impossible.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So okay, so HR was it something that you thought was going to be a non-entity, 3 people, and now you got 18 right at the center, right?
Yep.
But it sounds like you've gotten through that, and you've kind of bounced that a little bit, maybe, and maybe you still have some issues with the 20-somethings, or maybe even if you have to terminate or if you bring in people on, that's not always easy. What are some other challenges that you're facing in business today?
The healthcare systems in the United States are really geared towards large healthcare systems and hospital systems. And I went from being a big guy in a big system to being a little guy with no system. And so trying to create relationships with insurance companies, create relationships with distributors, all that real world stuff is real, and it can be a problem. I'll give you an example. Right now, as we make this video, in October 2024, there's a national shortage of saline.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is saline? It's water with salt, right?
Yes.
But we can't get enough, right? I have a rate limiting step. I give people chemotherapy to help them with their diseases, and it's got to run through saline. And I'm not, my allocation cannot be increased from the distributor. It reminds me of my dad telling me about when they would try to get steel from the steel mill and they were given a certain allocation. So I'm allocated on how much water I'm allowed to get. It just that's the real world. It's fascinating. And my COO and I joke that every day there's a new surprise, something that pops up that we didn't know about, whether that be some tax thing we weren't aware of, a host of things. But we navigate through it, and it's fun, and it keeps me on my toes. Nobody can tell me I'm not allowed to see an extra patient on Saturday. Nobody can tell me that I can't see someone and write the bill off if it's appropriate. I get to deliver care the way I think care should be delivered. And it's a really great feeling to be able to do that in my hometown.
Yeah, no, I love that. So yeah, small fish in a small pond, right? In a giant sea, probably more than good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny that you brought that shortage of saline up. That I just heard about that Sunday. I was in a mixed group of people. We were talking. One of them was a nurse. She was talking about the shortage in saline. Another one actually happens to train horses, and she said, ironically, we can get horse saline all the time. And it's probably the same stuff. But
When you think about it, if you have table salt at home and you have faucet water, you could make it. It's just not, it's not sterile, and my education manager won't let me do that. I asked her today, and she said no.
Correct. And actually, there's regulations that don't allow hospitals to make their own saline. They can all make their own saline.
Correct. Yeah, that area. And that's just, that's one of a gazillion examples, but you're absolutely right. It's the real world stuff that crops up. The easiest thing I do during the course of the day is take care of someone who's got a chronic neuroimmunologic condition, multiple sclerosis. Right. And that's because I was trained in that. I went to school for 12 years to do that. That's the easy part. The hard part is trying to figure out, trying to get a blanket service and not being able to afford enough of it, and trying to jockey a deal where I can get half a blanket service, trying to get them to come out. That's the heartache and the stress.
Yes. So you're talking about people, supply chain, lean manufacturing, and purchasing. Oh,
yeah. And I'm a dumb doctor. I didn't, when I started this business, I didn't know how to read a P&L sheet. I'm not an MBA, and fortunately I can read things and I can be taught. If I made a good decision, it was to not try to do the business on my own. I have accountants and lawyers that are smarter than I am, and I have some business people that I've hired that, I hired them to tell me what to do, and they're good at it, and I'm very, very fortunate. But I give myself a little credit just for realizing that just because I know a lot about immunology and the brain does not mean I know about supply chain.
Right. And just so people don't listen to the podcast and say, what are they talking about? So one of the largest saline manufacturing companies was in North Carolina. It got wiped out by the hurricane. So if anybody's wondering, what are they talking about? That can't be true. It's 100% true.
It's 100% true.
Half the saline that was used in the U.S. or something like that. Is that right?
We literally are nervous. We are, we have just enough saline to get us through a couple, and then we're going to be scurrying. We're desperately trying. So it's a very real situation.
Right. And we give that to just about every patient that walks into an emergency room, because most people that come in with an injury are dehydrated in some way. So
100%.
They need that saline, right?
Any intravenous medicine is run through water.
Yeah, run through water.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So we got on the topic with you. This is great. I love it. This is a great conversation. It's fun. So, all right. So we talked about some of your challenges, but also we know tomorrow and 6 months from now, the world's going to be different, because we're constantly evolving in the workplace, around people, different things happen to us. So everything's evolving. So have you guys been able to create any kind of strategies around how to stay innovative in your business model?
Yeah. My dad taught me when I was little, if you make wagon wheels and that's all you make, or if you make horses saddles and that's all you make, and then they invent a wagon, you got a problem, right? And so my bread and butter is taking care of folks impacted by multiple sclerosis, and the business model involves giving them infusions. So instead of farming that out, we do that ourselves, and there's a margin there. But that's not where we stop. So for example, we've opened up other avenues. I mentioned that I have a clinical trials program, and it's not a small program. We partner with manufacturers that are developing therapies and need tested. And that's its own separate entity. And that's a very thriving, we have 70, 80 people that are involved in clinical trials. And I have a team of about 4 people, and that's all they do all day long, is help manage those trials. And so that's another, if you think like a business person, that's another product line. I don't think about it that way, because the widget is somebody's mother. It's a human, but from a business standpoint, it's an avenue. Similarly, we do a lot of management of spasticity, and there's a whole other business line, if you'll excuse that, with administering botulinum toxin and giving people intrathecal baclofen pumps. And so that's a whole other separate, in other words, I'm diversifying. Yep. We manage severe headaches, which is outside of my narrow bandwidth, but it's a great service to people. They benefit from it, and there's a margin there. I started a supplement company, and I wanted to be able to bring patients high quality supplements where I could prove to you where the ingredients came from. And so what, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, by diversifying, I can keep all kinds of different things afloat, and that can help a lot. That's one of the things we can do. I also think within the world of medicine, we can do things a little bit different. So every patient has my cell phone. We see televisits, within a second when someone needs us. We talk to people, and if you have a problem with your billing, you talk to the woman who's processing it. It's a very flat model. And so that's innovative, although it shouldn't be. A lot of frustrations that people have with their healthcare providers surround communication and understanding. And so I think my team does one hell of a good job of really putting communication first and foremost. We place the patient and the family at the center of our decisions, and we dance around them trying to figure out what to do. And that shouldn't be innovative, but in my space in healthcare, it is. And I think that's why a lot of times people are willing to travel to come see us, because they know when they need us, we're going to be there for them.
That's great. What a great story. And yeah, I go back to your lean healthcare concept. It sounds like the docs and the nurses were using it, but maybe not the administrative and the bill pay folks, right? I definitely have my issues with bill issues from a medical, and it's months and months and months and months and months.
It's money doesn't grow on trees, and this stuff's expensive. And so we have to be good shepherds and help families navigate through this stuff. And they can't develop financial hardships along the way. And, right. We don't have giant foundations, or we don't write, we can't just write big bills off, and we don't have a donor, but we can make it work. And it does work. And I'm very proud of that.
That's awesome. Thanks for that story. That's great. So let's talk about your future. Could you offer a glimpse? And please don't share anything that's like IP related, anything like that. But anything specific around what you think the future of the entrepreneurial journey is, around the businesses? What are your plans for the next 5 years or so?
I do. After we built the business and the clinic was thriving and up and running, and that was a process in and of itself, I'm still in a phase right now of optimization. I had created the perfect prison for myself where I could work 6 days a week for 12 hours a day and never had a day off. And in the beginning, if I stepped away, we couldn't run the business. We couldn't infuse patients in my absence. And So there's a lot of effort put forth bringing on and training mid-level providers, brilliant nurse practitioners, getting them credentialed, which is its own story, and so on and so forth. So now I can step away from the business for 4 minutes, and I could take a day off, believe it or not, or I could go deliver a lecture, participate in Congress, and it still runs. And accomplishing that was actually a multi-year process. That was not a straightforward thing. As we think about going into the future, I really think, and this is a little bit biased to me, but you're asking me, that our model is a better model. And I think that for patients that have chronic immunologic conditions, taking care of them outside of a healthcare system has advantages. And so, right, the future, I imagine bringing on board, like say, a rheumatologist to join me in practice, because we use many of the same resources, and with the same philosophy, we can help a larger group of patients with the same business philosophy and the same resources, the same supply chains, the lines, and stuff like that. So for me, the growth really looks like expansion and providing services to different kinds of patients. So, in probably within the next fiscal year, we'll be looking at trying to bring on a doc or two.
Nice. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. One final question for you, and you've shared a lot about your business. I want to tap into the inner Aaron on this one. The guy who was afraid that, he couldn't do anything outside of the academic world and all those other things. So what advice would you give to an entrepreneur that's thinking about starting a business, but that's scared about it? What advice would you give?
Fake it until you make it. It's an old expression. I think that, we live in a world of mediocrity. And if you're passionate about doing something, and I think it's important to be passionate about it, because otherwise you're not going to be able to continue to plug away, you'll find a way to make it work. I spoke to no less than 6 or 7 law firms when I was trying to set up my practice, and they all marketed themselves as medical law firms. When they heard I want to start a practice, and they said, well, who are your donors? Who are your partners? They said, we don't want to do it. And I finally found a group that would do it. Same thing with accountants. I mean, and we just didn't take no for an answer, and we just kept hammering, and you know what? It'll happen. I wasn't planning, after I locked in 6,000 square feet in a 10-year lease, that the governor would disallow people coming in the office.
Right.
And I had done 0 telemedicine in my life. And I looked at my business guy and said, guess we're doing telemedicine. And we didn't know how to do that. We didn't know what that meant. I had never used Zoom in 2020. And we started doing telemedicine and turned into a great thing. So I think it's okay to be scared. I always remind people of the definition of bravery. Being brave is doing something when you're scared. So if you're going into work, grinding, coming home, and you're not, that's not scary to you, you're not being brave, you're just earning a paycheck. And I want to provide care for people impacted by MS in my hometown, period. And once I realized that's what I needed to do, everything else just fell in place. So, a no is just someone who doesn't yet understand exactly what I was asking. And I think if you're passionate about doing something and you're scared, just do it anyways. It's going to end up, but I have more control over how I deliver care. I have more control over my schedule. I do better financially. I mean, I can't believe that I allowed hospital systems and large healthcare systems to control what I did for as long as I did. And in hindsight, I wish I'd done it sooner, but that would be my advice.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. It was incredible to learn about your journey, your business. It sounds like you're providing a service that obviously people desperately need, and you do it in a way that makes them feel important and valued. And it's awesome that I sense a purpose in what you're doing, which is incredible. So thanks for sharing your story with us. To everyone watching, and we're just looking forward to seeing you and hearing you on our next episode. Thanks again, Aaron.
God bless. Thank you.